We found throughout the years that a lot of people, and this is just the context of where we are in the world, things have been so siloed, right, at organizations, and people have like a narrow lane and focus on what they do. They really have no idea how it impacts the bottom line, how it impacts somebody else, weeks or years down the road. So understanding what your people are doing and then the processes that they are managing and performing is key.
Thank you for stopping by Nurture Small Business Podcast. I am your host, Denise Cagan. If you're looking for stories that lift up women business owners, both in their personal and professional lives, you are at the right place. As always, if you like what you hear on today's podcast, please share it. You have my gratitude for doing so. Today's guest is an expert in processes, people, and optimization. She crafts innovative solutions that drive results. Today, I have Jennifer White from the MJW Group with me today. How are you doing, Jennifer?
Doing good, Denise. How about yourself?
Doing well. I am so impressed with your credentials. You have an engineering degree, is that correct?
I sure do.
Ooh, okay. Tell me about that. From where?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Central Florida. I'm originally from Florida. So I went to UCF long ago, many moons ago, and I majored in industrial engineering. And they used to call us the imaginary engineers, like the other engineering curriculums, but because we always studied how people interact in systems and with technology, and why people do the things that they do in those systems and technology. So they used to call us the imaginary engineers. But I mean, look at us today. We're all over the place. IEs rule.
Okay, so I have never heard that term first off, so that's interesting. But engineers that study people in the process, tell me, break that apart a little bit for me.
Yeah. So we always look at how people are interacting, like I said, in a system or with technology. So what makes people go right, go left? A lot of industrial engineers study processes and flow optimization. So think about major systems that you interact with on an everyday basis. I'm talking hospitals, airports, restaurants, colleges, facilities. So we analyze, like, where do people go? What makes them stop and look at certain things? And how do they respond if we put like a good instance is at Walt Disney World, right? I interned there. There's a whole industrial engineering department. So we used to strategically place beverage carts outside of attractions because we knew people would be hungry or thirsty when they come out of an attraction, or we would strategically place the stroller parking. Stroller parking is a major thing at Disney World.
I bet. So interestingly enough, I've heard of user interaction in relation to websites. So user experience, that I'm very familiar with. I actually had no idea that engineering would study that as well. See, I learned something new about you today.
Yeah, we look at their behaviors, like I said, and we do a lot of analyzation. That's how we optimize the processes. So Chick-fil-A is very good at optimizing and utilizing all kind of customer data to make your customer experience a lot better.
And there's that word, data. So interestingly enough, there's lots of data for every single business. I mean, I literally just pointed one of my leaders to it this morning and said, hey, the data doesn't lie. Did you fact check that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Did you see if there's a trend?
Yep.
So there's so much data coming into a business, and a lot of times business owners don't know how to utilize it. Can you give me a real life situation, maybe without identifying the client, of how you just kind of picked this apart and molded it back together to create a real change?
Yeah. So sometimes businesses come to us because they want to move to a new type of technology. So let's just say it's a project management system. So we'll start asking questions. We'll do like a deep dive analysis to understand, why are you trying to move away from your previous system, because there's a lot of work that goes in migrating from an old system to a new system. So we'll first ask questions around the return on investment, right? So what are you looking to gain from going to this new system? If they already have some understanding of the new system, if they don't and they're looking for, what options are out here in the marketplace, that's where we ask a lot of business analysis type of thoughts and gap analysis questions to understand, why are you moving to this direction? Is it because of an ad you saw? Is it a referral from another business owner that, they talked about their struggles, or and how this new system helped them evolve from it? Is it a specific feature that you're looking for? What have you? So we'll kind of deep dive into questions like that. We'll go into the ROI. We look at the total cost of ownership for that platform or application, meaning how many users are going to be in the platform. And then over time, like, what is the maintenance cost to keep that platform up and going, right? So the more data you add to it, can that application expand with your company, or are you always going to have to be buying more space and more space and more users, right? So looking at that total cost of ownership to determine this is a good fit. And then we kind of try to annualize, in this instance, with a technology, if it makes sense, meaning, can the business grow right with this application? So we tend to look at some of the features, the benefits, but the product roadmap of that technology as well, to kind of understand where the product is headed before we recommend it to a new a business. So a lot of times we kind of know where these applications are headed because we use them internally as well. But other clients that we've, implemented these technologies with, we kind of have some traction to know if it's going to work in your environment or not. Another key thing is the users themselves. So if they're already trained in utilizing applications that we're getting ready to implement, or does your organization have more of a bigger user adoption and learning curve to adapt to a newer technology? So change management plays a huge role in a lot of the transformational activities that we do, but it does play a big role in technology, because if the users aren't ready to adopt that new technology, you're going to have a harder time just getting them to leave the old one, not utilize it anymore, and then see the fruits of the labor, years down the line.
So you talk about, the curve in learning the technology. You referenced it a specific way, but also it's not just learning it, it's actually changing habits, because we've worked with clients before and we've been solidly on Asana forever. And
Mhm.
so, we've had clients like, oh yeah, okay, that looks great. Set it up for us. So we would set it up, but then they never use it. I
Right,
mean, they don't develop the habits. I've seen that with CRM systems as well,
right,
where it's like, okay, I expect it to do the work. Well, you have to input or create
right.
some type of automations or workflow that's going to input. And so they don't ever change their habits. Do you guys address any of that as well?
Yeah, so if you can see behind me, people, when we people, process, data, and technology, we talk about these things in this order because one, when we go through any type of and I'm calling these transformations because that's what it is, right? If it's a
Hmm.
significant change, we call them a transformation in a business. So the first thing is identifying, recognizing what your culture is for what it is, right? And the people that are there, right? So what are their skill sets? How how resistant are they going to be to change? Are they willing to embrace and adopt change? Do they have a job description, or they understand the focus of their role and how they're going to contribute to this new change that's happening? So it all starts with people and their behaviors, right? Like I talked about, understanding how people work in a system. Then we move on to the process. So do people understand how the work they're doing, how does it contribute to everybody else, right, in the company? Not just their siloed individual part, but how does it relate to
Hmm.
everybody else
Hmm.
down the line? We found throughout the years that a lot of people, and this is just the context of where we are in the world, things have been so siloed, right, at organizations, and people have like a narrow lane and focus on what they do. They really have no idea how it impacts the bottom line, how it impacts somebody else, weeks or years down the road. So, understanding what your people are doing and then the processes that they are managing and performing is key. And a lot of times this is lacking because people don't connect the people and the processes together. They just connect, okay, Joe and Billy have been doing this for so long that, we've allowed them to develop their own way of doing it, which is fine. But at some point, you need to document those learnings so you can turn them into a baseline and then utilize that baseline as a standard. That standard then becomes what we call in continuous improvement. You start to have measurement systems. So then from that baseline, you can say, okay, we want to improve X amount, 5%, year over year, and start to track to that. But it starts first with identifying what people are doing and then what the processes they're managing.
I love that. Absolutely love that. So I took a sneak peek on your website. Not that I'm unfamiliar with your website, because I am, but familiar, that is. I saw a few white papers and they spanned manufacturing, supply chain, and retail. And so tell me about the white papers, like what did you do to put them together? Which one do you find, which one is your favorite maybe?
Oh, okay. I don't know if I have a favorite per se, but these we actually call them our case studies. Our case studies, these are actual projects or transformations that we've done, that we've performed. So yes, the majority of them have been in around supply chain operations and manufacturing, because that's what our bread and butter is, right? That's our I guess our cape, right? Our Superman cape, like that's where we thrive. Um, Most of the time when we're implementing these transformations, the larger the team, the better it is because they understand um, that there's a scaling, it could be a scaling issue, or it could be a change management, meaning user adoption to whatever the change is. It can be a culture shift. It could be something like we experienced with COVID that no one really could predict, but it was a major change that happened. And ever since then, we've been doing things a little bit different. So with our case studies, I would say a favorite, I don't have a favorite, but one that sticks top of mind is one that we did with a food and beverage manufacturer. They were implementing a new supply chain technology. However, there was a lot of constraints that we experienced moving into the new technology because of it being food and beverage, and they're monitored by a whole set of different regulations, right, with the USDA, et cetera. They had three business model. One was their food to be kosher. The other was organic, and then the third was just like normal business process. So you got to imagine when you're producing food at that level, and I'm talking like major silos of beverages that they were producing, you have to make sure when you're manufacturing and going through production that you're cleaning the machine properly. So think about, if you know what kosher is and what that means, like it has to be like creme de la creme clean, and you don't want to cross contaminate any mixtures or anything like that. So a lot of times people don't realize, like, just, and this is why we say technology last, you have to get the business process done right. And you have to understand what data you need to see in and out of a technology before you input it into a technology. So if you have been doing something for years and years and years, most of the time the people on the floor or at the manufacturing facility, they know how something would work, but sometimes they can't visually like see that in a technology before it's implemented. So there's a lot of data setup that goes on in the background. There's a lot of back and forth with cleaning data. Like I said, the same process that's happening manually, you want to make sure you can mimic that in your system. In this case, in supply chain, it affects everything you're doing. Like it affects before you produce, right? Getting the right liquids, the right containers, the right caps, the
Storage.
right the right packaging. And you probably know, Denise, like there's quality assurance and there's quality controls that happen with making sure that this is done correctly. And then downstream, it's getting those right packages to the right consumers, the right stores, the right wholesalers, retailers. So it's very important to understand the data that's going into these technologies, so you can optimize it. Because at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, we're always looking for how can we do things better, faster, cheaper, and technology helps us do that a little bit better, but it's not the solve for everything. So that's why I really hone in on people, process, data, then technology in that order.
Interesting. As you were describing all that, I chuckled because I don't know if you recall, but I spent 10 years at Coca-Cola in the QA
Mhm.
department. And
Yep.
so the very first thing that came to my mind is like, ooh, sanitation.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you caught that chuckle, but yes, that's as soon as you said it, I was like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well,
And
all of that,
those things are very important. Like I
oh
said, a
yeah.
lot of times people don't realize all these smaller, we just go to the store and we just get product and we don't really think about all the processes that it took to make that product.
Yeah. And sometimes the people within the group don't understand everything that needs to happen. Again, because you said it's as you said, it's siloed. I
Mhm.
think I know from my days at Coca-Cola, I feel like they were really good about actually, you know, informing people about, how this impacted this and at least what when I was there in the facility that I was at. So um
Good.
that is really cool. Okay. So manufacturing, retail, supply chain, where else do you work?
Professional services. So we'll work with service-oriented companies like financial firms and law firms and marketing agencies, life coaching agencies as well.
Okay. Okay. And do you have a favorite type of client?
Mhm. Favorite type of client are clients that are willing to embrace change. And
Great
and
answer.
what I mean by that is, if they recognize there's an issue, right? Or I should say opportunity, there's an opportunity to improve and they want to do better. So they recognize, okay, hey, we have an opportunity to increase, decrease, reduce, whatever the verbiage is that they want to use, right? We want to achieve some type of savings. And usually when we're called in, right, because sometimes people give consultants a bad name, because they know like we're coming in to cause a rift. Like that's why we're here. And sometimes change is good, changes for the better. We're all working towards that. And because the worst thing companies can do is be in a complacent mindset, because we know what happens when you don't change, right? We have too many examples that are before us now to realize, hey, you don't want to be like Kodak and not change with the times. I mean, and some people listening may not even know who Kodak is, but we all know what happened with that. What happened with Blockbuster, how that changed, right? So you want to be able to be in a place that's innovative, that's creativity is warranted. You're willing to spend on R&D, research and development, because my husband jokes all the time, like, where did the name 409, the cleaner 409 came from? Because they had to try 409 times until they got the formula right. So you
I
have to
did
be
not know
willing.
that.
That's what he told me. Now, I did not fact check that, but that's what he told me. Um, so you have to be willing, right, to take risks, right, to take on these challenges. And I know sometimes, especially for small businesses, it's a little tricky where that pendulum, is gonna end up, because we don't necessarily have big budgets to do R&D or to take risks. But we inherently know in the back of our minds that if we don't, like, we're gonna get,
Left
eaten
behind.
up by the big shark. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what are you working on new in your business?
Right now, what we're working on new, we're redeveloping our operational leadership development platform. So, our leadership development, we used to just incorporate it as we were doing these transformational initiatives on these projects, but now we're going to really hone in on having it as its own platform. And we are targeting operational leaders. So I'm talking about these leaders in the facilities that we do these projects in because a lot of times they're sandwiched. I call them they're like a sandwich leader, right? So they're reporting to a VP or a C-suite person, but they have all of these direct reports underneath them in an operations management setting or a value stream setting. And so they're trying to make sure they're satisfying, you know, what the goals are or the organization, right, with C-suite leadership. At the same time, they're trying to make sure they are advocating for their people that report in below them as well. So that can be all the way at the lower level to an operator on the floor. So how do we help them, navigate every day when they still have to get product out the door, right? I've had 30 people call out today because they're sick or for whatever reason, or someone's out on FMLA, but we still committed to shipping $1 million every day of product out the door. But yet I don't have enough people to run the lines, right? I don't have enough people as drivers. I'm constrained by people, or the system is down, or um the tool that we're utilizing is out of order, right? Maintenance has to get another part. So we want to talk to those leaders because it is difficult. And I've been in that situation when I was in a manufacturing environment where, you're expected to deliver, but you can't because there's so many external variables and forces that are against you, but you still have to get product out at the end of the day. You still have to meet your KPIs and metrics. So this operational leadership development is a platform dedicated just for that type of audience.
So you mentioned, the constraints with people, calling out on FMLA, et cetera. What about hiring? Has that impacted the work that you do? Because every business owner I know is struggling with hiring for the most part. It's rare that they're not.
Absolutely. Hiring is definitely part of that. So we are in a fortunate situation where I've been kind of counting it as what a time to be alive, right? This is like an amazing time to be alive, to see all the transformation that I've been able to see so far and being able to witness what's happening, seeing the change literally happen right before our eyes in the workplace, where we're fortunate enough to have, 4 or 5 generations working together at the same time. Also have increased innovation and technology happen at the same time, right? So not only do we have computers, we have smaller computers, we have nanotechnology, we have AI in the workplace as well. There's automation, there's workflow automation, there's optimization going on all the time. So there's a lot of moving parts that are happening constantly. And hiring does affect all of that because while we do have technology, like I said, technology provides an ease of life. There is a shortage of people that understands this new technology, or the ways that we used to do things before. Those jobs are no longer needed. So fortunately, like I said, we're in a good space to be okay. What a time to be alive. But there is a gap with catching up that learning curve to where there are people, certain age groups, right, that don't necessarily care about this new technology and don't want to learn it. And then there are those that do want to learn it, but finding someone to teach them or have enough, traction to be able to teach and want to teach. And then there are those I think that, do I even want to work in this kind of environment? you know, like I don't want to have to clock in anymore. I don't want to have to get up
Hmm.
at this time and be in traffic. And so there's a lot of competing interests that are happening right now. And it is affecting everyone's ability to hire. I saw an article recently here with the state, of North Carolina about childcare and what the state is trying to do to help strengthen the childcare facilities with grants and funding, because they don't have enough to hire those workers that can, watch preschool, smaller age kids so parents can go to work. So it's just been like a trickle down effect
Mm-hmm.
that's been happening.
Absolutely. So I imagine while you're consulting people and moving them through the people process, what was the other word?
Data.
Data. That one's right behind your head. Sorry. Data and technology. that you probably have to get pretty innovative on the people piece, but considering the challenges that small business, business owners are having right now.
Absolutely.
So, Jennifer, what parting words would you like to leave us with, and how can our listeners find you?
Yeah. Parting words, I would just say, just take time to reimagine. Like, I try to do this often because I know sometimes we can just get inundated with all this stuff that's going on. Like I kind of talked about doom and gloom a minute ago, but it's really not doom and gloom. Like, try to look at it like a silver lining. Like, what good is going to come out of all this change and transformation that's happening, right? How can I come out on the other side of it? How can I position my business or what I'm doing individually in my profession a little bit different, right? Figure out how you're going to insert yourself to make a difference if you want to, right? Some people don't. They want to just see what happens, wait and see, right? So there's that method as well. But I would encourage everyone to figure out, where do you fit? Because our society is changing right now. And you got to determine, where am I going to fit? It's kind of like, I've heard people kind of reminisce, how it was in the last Great Depression. It kind of feels like that for some people, right? They don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. So how can you make something different? How can you make something better? Is there a new skill I can learn? Can I help somebody else learn something that I know? Like, what can you do to help with that? And then, as far as how people can reach out to me, my email is Jennifer at the MJWGRP.com. And then I'm always on LinkedIn at Jennifer MW, or you can find me on the MJW group page.
Perfect. And I will make sure that all of that information is in our show notes so that listeners can just click and go to find you. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Denise. This was fun. I enjoyed it.
I did too. Thank you for joining me for today's podcast, where I focus on women in business and how we can be allies to one another. Please rate us on the podcast app that you listen to the most, and send me any ideas you have for podcast topics or any other feedback. I love to hear from my listeners. You can reach me at Denise@dcavirtual.com.